Here we go. You know what's going down, right? Like that. Yeah.
I saw this panel starting to come together a couple of weeks ago, a month or so ago, and I knew I wanted to be here. First of all, just to be with you guys, and so rare to see each other these days. So I wanted to hang with you, but also venue careers is something that I don't think is discussed enough and talked about. We've a lot of folks sort of fall into it, and because they know people, and so I am really excited to be diving into this world with you all, the details, the trends, and really the career pathways. We are joined today by some of the industry's top leaders in this space. So let's begin with panelist introductions, a little bit about yourself and your role in venue. Kelli, let's start with you.
Hey, everybody. My name is Kelli Hovanec. I am a general manager at the new venue out here in Dallas. We have a new 1,000-person music venue that should be opening here shortly. My background is with House of Blues venues. I was at the Chicago House of Blues for over 10 years. And then I came out to Dallas and was at the Dallas House of Blues for over 6. And then, like I said, I've been doing, getting ready to open a new venue here, still helping at the House of Blues as well, though. So, 16 years with Live Nation, House of Blues being the majority of that. Started as a restaurant hostess and just slowly made some moves, moved to, still serving and things like that. But then I made the jump into management, and from there just kept going. So I'm here now, GM in Dallas.
I love it. Okay, so from server to GM, we'll talk about that in a bit more. All right, Chance, let's hear a little bit on your where you started and your role currently in the industry.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chance Fullerton. I am the market general manager for Sacramento at the Ace of Spades Concert Hall and Punchline Comedy Club here in Sac. I have been in the industry 26 years. I started when I was 10. Yeah. No. I started originally at House of Blues in New Orleans. I've worked for Live Nation probably about 20 years, off and on. Started in New Orleans as a security guard. At the time, we called them door host, and then went from New Orleans to Las Vegas. Was in Vegas for a while as a ops manager, and then left the company for a while, and then came back in Chicago House of Blues as a manager. Stacy's going to start laughing because I'm going to go through this whole list of venues. And then Cleveland as a music hall director, then Dallas as a music hall director. I left the company again and then came back in DC with the Warner Theater, and then Irving Plaza. And then I moved out to the West Coast and worked for AG, Golden Voice for a while, and then came back to Live Nation in 2019 here in Sacramento. So I know it's a long list.
Sweet. I love it. I love it. All right. We're going to dive more into that, Chance, by the way. Certainly. All right, Stacy, take us.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stacy Butler. I'm the head of club operations for Venue Nation. I oversee 25 venues across the country for Live Nation, all 1,700 cap and below, including 4 comedy clubs. I have been in the industry for about 20 years now, 10 of which are with Live Nation. So pre-Live Nation, I was running nightclubs in Hollywood. I ran the world famous Viper Room on the Sunset Strip for a bit. Before finding my career with Live Nation, I started the House of Blues on the Sunset Strip, running the Foundation Room. And then kind of like the other two, I worked in a lot of different venues, mostly House of Blues. Found myself in Anaheim, opening the new House of Blues in Anaheim, where I was the GM there for about 3 years before taking on my current role now as the head of club operations. That's me.
Awesome. All right. So this panel is venue management, and it's really interesting because clearly you guys walked in the door in all different places inside of and careers and jobs in venue, but this idea that you've like elevated to the point where now you oversee, and some of you guys are overseeing region, or Stacy, you're overseeing multiple clubs inside of the United States. So it's interesting, all the different layers inside of a massive enterprise like Live Nation, and how venues sort of weave and connect communities in those areas, and I feel like I'm weaving around my question here, so let me just get to it right now. I know this is a very basic question, but I think it's important for a number of our audience to know about the key areas in running a live music venue, right? So each venue, and I know House of Blues also has some pretty wide arms too, and with the restaurants and everything, but a venue, what are, and we can spitball here into this room, but what are the specific areas, key areas to running a live music venue? Chance, you want to start us?
Wow. I think if anything, from a divisional standpoint, in the building, for me, it's always separated into its front of house and back of house. And in regards to that, it's front of house is guest service relations, ticketing, the box office, it's the food and beverage in the bar. And then the back of house is always production, band interaction, and all that. And they all kind of meld together in that sense. So front of house, back of house.
Front of house. Kelli, Stacy, you want to add a little bit more to that? Some color? Nope.
I think, from the business aspect, like Chance said, there's so many different departments all under one roof. But there's also, the financial aspect of running not just a live music concert venue, but, really any business, money coming in, money going out. How do you increase revenue? How do you save on your expenses? Are you managing line by line? But also recognizing the opportunity and being able to pivot. I think everyone kind of knows the live music industry can be very finicky and things change very, very quickly. So being able to make those adjustments for, the best for the building, but also, something that the three of us focus on a lot is what's best for the fan and what's best for the artist. So there's so much to live music where it's the money, it's the expenses, but it's also the happiness of the people, in the venue. Are they having a good time?
The fan and artist experience, up certainly right at the top there. Kelli, anything more to add?
I mean, they said it, but really what, the biggest thing too with all of this is the communication, right? We have to communicate every single little thing between all these key areas, right? That's what keeps it all together, because like Stacy said, I mean, anything can change, and, the bands, they might want one thing today and something different tomorrow, and, everything's different. So keeping that communication for all these key areas is very important.
Cool, because you're touching on this topic, this idea of certain skills and characteristics that you just need to have in your roles. Being a good communicator, right? Just being able to continuously share up and out on what's happening. What other characteristics and skills do you guys lean into for your roles? Stacy, you want to start with?
I think, it might sound kind of silly, but I think intuition is a huge part of what we do. And just, we might not always have the answers off the bat, but we know how to get to what our end goal is. So having, I don't want to call it common sense, but common sense is really important to, what we do. And I think that that's a tool that sometimes is underutilized. But just going back to common sense, I think that's huge. knowing what a good leader is and making sure that you're a good leader and leading by example. You can't get people to do what you want if you're not going to, do what you want of them. So leadership is huge because, Chance, Kelli, they're the leaders of their ship, which is their venue. And, they're the captains. So no one's going to follow if they're not, making the right decisions and being that leader. So I think that's a top priority.
Leadership skills. Brilliant. I've also heard, especially in the industry, this idea that you have to be able to vibe, right? You have to read the room. Like it's, again, you can't, how do you describe that? But it. I think that's your intuition, right? You have to be able to know how to feel things out too. Chance, some skills and characteristics that you really lean into for your job.
I mean, I think a good bit of it, like you said, vibe, and Stacy said, we ironically were talking about it earlier today. There is a point where you literally have to trust your gut. You need to be aware of the fact that, okay, you know what, that just, this is not going the direction, or it is going the right direction, and just kind of fall into it and go with that. It is one of those situations where people always ask me, how do I like my job? And how is my job? And it's always one of those senses where I call it an 80-20 job. 80% of the time it's great, and 20% of the times it's hectic. So and that's a really good percentage. So you kind of lean into that and realize that everything changes constantly in this business, and not one of those, every hour something's different. Like every minute something could change in this business. You don't know what's going to happen. And it's relatively easy to walk into a night and thinking everything's going to be great. And, and then somebody's all like, we're going to have a great night. And as Kelli and Stacy would know, you look at the person like, thank you. You just jinxed us, because now it's not going to be a great night and something else is going to happen. But you do rely a lot on the people you work with. You form really good work relationships, and you kind of build, it does take a village sometimes. So you sense that when you work with people, some people you work better with, some people you don't, but in the aspect of that, you always have to lean on people's strengths. And I think that is one of the strengths that you should have, is be able to realize you can lean on for stuff. And all right, I can give this person X amount of jobs to do, and I know this is going to happen. And I can't give this person that many jobs because, but it's a balancing act every time.
I heard you have to be collaborative. You have to be able to work with people. And the other piece that you said is that it changes constantly. So you have to stay on your toes, right? You have to be alert, right?
Be a little bit psychic sometimes. You just kind of sense that there's going to be,
something.
There are nights where you just like, all right, I know in advance. And well, people are like, do you have a plan B? I'm like, no, I have plans A through Z at this point, because sometimes A, B, C, D, E, F don't work. So you've got to keep moving. It's relatively a game of chess sometimes on certain nights, because you don't know what's going to happen.
It's that whole like hope for the best, expect the worst,
and
you will always be prepared.
I had a GM tell me something one time and said, you don't know what's going to happen when you fill a room full of people and pour liquor into it. And it kind of answers the question. Out of a crowd of 2,000 people, you're going to have 20 people or 200 people that might be, I'm not going to use any bad language, but they're going to be morons or, out of pocket, to say the least. So that could throw off the whole evening, and especially the guest experience and the fan experience and even the band experience sometimes. So. Right. And it flips that when the band comes in and they're doing something they shouldn't be doing, and that goes crazy, and you have to go manage that. So it is literally a juggling act. Spinning plates in a windstorm, and there's a hurricane coming. That's usually what it is on a regular night.
I love it. We're not trying to scare you away.
No. This is, again, this is the situation where if you heard Kelli, you heard Stacy, we've been doing this a long time. We wouldn't be doing this if we didn't love what we did. And for all the challenges of the job, I think at this point, it went from, after about 10 years, it went from a job to a career. And the challenges of the job and the career make it enticing and make me want to do it every day. So.
Excellent. Kelli, some skills and characteristics that you feel like you really continue to nurture and need for your management role.
Well, they both kind of said it, but confidence, right? I mean, you gotta have confidence in yourself and your venue. You got to know what your venue can do and what your venue can't do, and what your team, like Chance said, you got to rely on other people, right? So you have to have confidence in that person. You have to have confidence in yourself, because I mean, if they don't do it, right, you have to be the one that does it. So, there's a lot of learning. And I think that's one of the coolest part of watching people grow in the company, is you can kind of tell when they're ready for that next step, because they have a level of confidence. They know the answers. They stick to their guns, right? I mean, also, we do have those people that, we have issues with in this company, and, or not even the company, but running a music venue, right? So you have to be confident in what you're saying, confident in your company policies, your decision. I mean, if somebody has to leave property, or you have to tell a band, no, they can't have another bottle of Grey Goose for the night, something like that. You have to be able to stick to your guns and, come across confident as well. So, they're not really coming back at you for anything. I mean, the girl that was hosting when she was 19 in Chicago versus who I am now, that's, if you asked me then what to do in certain situations, I would have no idea. And now I'm like, don't even think about it. I'm like, oh yeah, this is the answer. Done.
So talk to us a little bit about that trajectory. First of all, it looks like you have a fan club in here, by the way, Kelli. Everybody is like, she rocks.
I paid them. I'm just
you're right. We talked about we talked about throughout the day again that it's just not a straight line in the industry, that it's this circuitous route, and everybody that enters the creative economy and this creative sector is defining their path. Talk to us about the steps you took from being that 19-year-old server, the intentionality or the mentors, those things that helped you move into the place you are now.
Well, I think one of the first things was I kind of knew I wanted to be in this industry or this lifestyle, maybe more than anything, when I was kind of young. I feel like growing up, everyone was always like, I'm going to be a teacher, a nurse, and that kind of stuff. And I was like, I'm going to be a rock star. But I don't have any musical talent, maybe the recorder. So, as I was like growing up, like it just kind of wasn't in the, works for me to actually do the rock star part of it. So I always loved live music. I loved going to concerts from a really young age. So when I went to DePaul University in Chicago, and that's where I started working at House of Blues. House of Blues is one of my favorite venues to see shows, right? So it kind of made sense. This is the industry I want to be in. And right down the street from where I go to school is this venue I love going to shows at. So let's just put it together. And so I went there and, started at the bottom, right? But I had that, I knew I wanted to move up. I knew I wanted to keep, seating people and serving people in the restaurant. Great, but not what I want to do. I wanted to get on the music side of it. I wanted to be where the bands are loading in. I wanted to be where the fans are. That feeling that I had loving live music is what I wanted to be a part of, like giving that every night to people, which is pretty cool because, we all say it all the time. Chance and Stacy probably tell their team as well. But, you might have somebody who's never been to a concert before. It's their first time ever, and you get to be a part of that. And they'll have that memory forever because we talk about that stuff all the time. What was the first show you saw? What was the best show you saw? Those kind of questions. And being able to be a part of that for somebody is pretty awesome. And it just kind of kept me going. And yeah, I mean, from there, like I said, I just kind of had the drive, right? I went to school for business management. I wanted to do, DePaul had a music business program, but you had to be in the music school for it, which means you had to audition with an instrument. So I got tripped up there. But yeah, I mean, I just kind of kept going. I was pretty determined, and that's a little bit of my path. I mean, of course, there were some hiccups there, but I got here.
Right. I think that then it makes it even sweeter when we have those hiccup moments. Do you find that there was someone or particular that helped open doors for you, or was just your tenacity that just kept you kept seeing opportunities and you just kept running towards them?
Well, I think thinking about old school House of Blues day, which Chance for sure can talk to, maybe tell us a story if he's up for it. But Stacy as well, like it's kind of the Wild West, right? And it was just like very inviting. And the general manager that I had when I was starting off, well, not my first general manager, but in that first group, he was the one that he gave me that little boost to confidence, going back to that, right? He was the one that, listened when I was like, all right, I think I'm ready for the next step. I really love this company. I really want to keep moving up in it. And, I don't know if I looked up to him as much as he was just somebody that I could go to and kind of get a good read, right? Is this the right move for me? Am I ready for this? And he was always honest. So I appreciated that. And then, I was really fortunate to go from him to another general manager who, has since gone way up in the company. And he was another one. Now, he was tough. He was really tough. But that, pushed me as well. And maybe that kind of drove me a little bit as well, because I was like, oh, he said I can't do this. I'm going to do it now. Like, Stacy and Chance know who I'm talking about. But yeah, so it was a little bit of both, right? Like I wanted it and I was going for it, but there were people, of course, along the way. I mean, Stacy's that person for me now, right? That I go to and kind of tells me honestly what I need to know. See what the next step is from there.
Beautiful. Chance, do you want to take us on your journey a little bit and the steps you took from security, the people along the way, any tools or tricks you picked up that we can pass on?
Dumb luck, I guess. It's just a bit of it. I mean, I intentionally started hanging out at House Blues New Orleans for Sin Night. And if anybody, I'm really dating myself at this point, which was a dance night, that would follow the shows on Monday nights. And I hung out there so much that after about 5 months, they're like, you should just work here. You're here all the time. So I applied for the job and just for everybody's standpoint, didn't get it the first time out. The person who interviewed me told me I wasn't cool enough and didn't fit the genre of how House of Blues was at the time. We were long hair and earrings and blue hair and piercings and all that. And just like, so I'm like, all right, I didn't think anything of it, continued to hang out there, made some really good friends. And then the person who was in charge of that department ended up leaving the venue to go to another one. And the guy who was going to be my boss said, you should come back and apply again. So I did, and actually interviewed with another guy and got the gig. So it's been one of those things, like I count it as a blessing to start in New Orleans because that venue was so unique. I think Chicago had that same vibe also. So I've had a couple of, I guess you could consider them rabbis across my span in the business, one who's no longer with us was Don Watson. He was, an old school HB guy who's been around and probably hired me for most of my Live Nation and House Blues jobs. And then the other two, Stacy, of course, knows, is Eric Burkhammer, because she used to work for Eric. And then Mike Rozier, Mike was my first GM at House of Blues New Orleans. And, I found it really funny when Kelli was saying about GMs. I think from a management perspective, people don't realize how much their GM gives them. And it's not always because of something positive. Yeah, I mean, I've learned a lot from seeing bad GMs, not just working for us, but other companies where you're like, wow, okay, I don't want to be that way. So that kind of melds your management trajectory and like, I don't want to do that. So I kind of want to go in this direction. So, or I don't want to work for that company. So I've seen what their company puts out. So that was a lot of it. And I think a lot of the situation is just trying to find people who kind of, were like-minded, and those people kind of gave you a pat up and said, this is what you should be doing. And, let's do this and don't do that. And I mean, originally Old School House of Blues was definitely that way. You had a lot of mentors in that standpoint. But yeah, I think that's I guess that would be kind of it. I mean, I just kind of, and same with Kelli, just kind of worked my way up, and you worked from one spot to another. And ironically, Berkhammer used to call me the 2-year manager because he sent me to a venue for 2 years and like, all right, it's all good and we like you there, so we need you somewhere else. And he sent me somewhere else. So he's like, you're the perfect manager. You don't have a pet, you don't have a wife, you don't have a girlfriend. He sent you somewhere else. So I'm like, well, gee, I don't know if that's good or bad, but that's kind of the way it was for a couple of years.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I've heard Michael Rapino talk about one of the things that he shares with the next generation is to be open to move to a different city and be available to do that, because opportunities may be popping up in other places, and the choices you make. It's not for everybody, but I've heard him talk about that. So interesting. Stacy, I would love to hear, because you again have skyrocketed over this past few years, and I'm so thrilled to see you shine as bright as you are shining, and would love to hear, that you knew you wanted to be in it. You knew you wanted to feel that energy. What was that start? And then from the Viper Room, Foundation Room, all of that stuff and so on.
Well, I would love to say that I've always wanted to do this, and this was my dream since I was a little girl, but it wasn't. I don't want to say I kind of fell into it, but I did. I'm from Seattle, but I went to Los Angeles for school. I went to USC, and I was waiting tables at USC, and I think I had just graduated, and the restaurant that I was waiting tables at was owned by a nightlife company, and that's where I met, as Chance said, Eric Berghammer, who had just become the COO of the company. And, I think he saw something in me, saw that my abilities, were so much greater than waiting tables. So, he afforded me an opportunity in management. And so, I started kind of supervisory level and worked my way up in nightclubs. And then, he moved on to a different company and called me one day and said, I need a general manager for the Viper Room. And it was completely different than what I've been doing. So, Eric opened a lot of doors for me, but then you obviously have to put the work in and show that you want it. I'm a big advocate for, you should be doing the job that you want. So when I talk to young managers, I'm like, oh, you want to be an AGM, you want to be a GM, whatever, you should be doing the job that you want next. So really always going above and beyond and, going the extra mile. And I think I was pretty fortunate in my path with Live Nation to have some really, really great leaders. Felix Musenden being one of them. He really helped kind of skyrocket my career. And, Will Hodgson, he stepped in at a certain time and kind of took me to the next level. And before Will was Tim Jorgensen. He really allowed me to do the job of a GM. He let me he sat back and said, okay, what can you do? And he let me kind of prove myself. So I've been pretty fortunate to have some pretty great people throughout my career, but no, this is not what I first saw myself doing when I was, 7 years old. I got really lucky, kind of rolled the dice and hey, yeah, I love it. So here I am.
It's so good. And before Nalini comes in, because I'm seeing amazing questions come in from our audience here, is I think for everybody also to understand it, because you guys have been talking about being a people leader and leadership, right? And learning about your leadership styles, this idea of leading from the head, the heart, and you guys mentioned it, the gut, how important working from all of those. And I just wanted to drop that for everybody, because it's something that I keep journeying with too, and learning about. And I think as you guys continue to grow, for our young people out there and want to head into management roles, to really understand what your leadership style is and how you want to run your ship. I love that. The running the ship is brilliant. All right, Nalini, let's get us some questions going, because there's some really great ones. So, all right.
Yeah, awesome discussion. So Emily wants to know, on a typical day, how much time are you spending on individual tasks? Great question, isn't it?
The whole day, right? I think a lot of it is individual tasks. I mean, because we spend a lot of days interacting with so many people and so many different things. Yeah, it is a lot of individual tasks. I don't know any other way to put it. For me, it's all micro tasks that just kind of become macro, and then it becomes the show. So I don't know if that's the explanation, but that's the best
Are you
way I can
spending
explain it.
most of your time, Chance, like just issues come to you and you help move them out of the way and clear things up? Is that what you see a lot?
The goal is never to be you have to definitely be proactive. You don't want to, there's a lot of situations where you roll in and it's after the fact, but you want to be as planned as possible. But there is a lot of situations where, as Stacy said, there's no way you're going to know everything that's going to happen. So you just kind of have to be aware of it sometimes. And that's when the head, the heart, and the gut kind of come in. And you're like, okay, let me figure this out, and I guess another part of that is making sure that there is never a point where you want to give a staff member or a fan or a band member a no. You want to give some sort of explanation, whether it's like, don't know what it's going to be just yet. Let me figure this out. Let me go find this out. You just don't want to tell anybody no. I mean, it just opens up another can of worms,
That's great. All right, we'll jump into another question. Amber wants to know, for a student coming straight out of college and wanting to pursue venue management, what is their best first step?
Apply for any job that's open.
That's on you, Stacy.
Just go and apply for any job that is open, because I mean, I think the three of us on this call are a testament to, we started at the very bottom and we worked our way up. And I think that that's the best way. If you want to be a good manager, I'm assuming you want to be a general manager, you have to know every single aspect of the business. So you got to know what your dishwasher's doing, how you're scheduling a dishwasher. You got to know how, your ticket scanners in the box office are doing. And, you got to know every single aspect. So if you can get a job in ticketing or get a job in the kitchen or as a bus or a bar back, learn that job, master it, move on to the next, but just find your way in, however you can. I think is probably the best route.
That's awesome. Did anyone else have any advice?
I think the biggest fact that I tell my team every time I can preface it is, you learn something every day. There isn't a point where you're not learning something. If you sit there and say, I know everything, then you've defeated the purpose. I'm constantly learning. I've been doing this a long time, and I learn something every day. Whether it's something bad or something good, I still learn it, and I'm all like, take the lesson and go with it.
That's awesome. So another question coming in from Amber so the market venues in Nashville is extremely oversaturated. From your experience in this industry, are there any cities in particular where you have witnessed need for more live venues?
Good. Everybody's thinking. I love it.
Oh, it's a really good question.
I think
Stacy,
that, I mean, I don't,
I was like, Stacy,
well,
you might be the best one for
you know, I
this.
can't pick a market off the top of my head, but I can tell you that, you know, there's going to be markets that have maybe a greater necessity for certain size clubs. So there's kind of this, you know, for bands, there's this path. You know, you might start at the local corner bar, and then you get a gig at a 200 cap room, and then all of a sudden, you know, you're building yourself up to the 600 cap room, and it just keeps rolling, right? So there's a need for small rooms, medium-sized rooms, large rooms all over. So, you know, there might be a market that's missing that 200 cap room that needs kind of the stepping stone for bands. Again, I can't tell you off the top of my head what market that is. I think Denver might be one, right? Where we would like to possibly take a venue that is a little bit smaller and really help grow these bands. I think Live Nation has made it a point to want to help bands, you know, help grow them from the bottom up, and they want to be a part of that journey. And bands don't start playing in arenas; they start at the little bar, or, you know, the tiny little 200 cap room. So I can't tell you the market, but there's a necessity for every size room, I think, in major music markets.
I just saw a Radiohead contract for a show in Boston in 1993 where tickets were $5. Small venue, $3,000 guaranteed it. Like, it was, every band starts somewhere, right? It's amazing. All right, Nalini.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I can say a lot of my favorite concerts that I have attended, it has been those small, intimate venues to where the tickets are $30. So, yeah, definitely a need. Emily wants to know, is success in your career thus far more due to factors within your own personal control? And there is a part 2 to that question, but I'll ask that one first.
I mean, I think we could all say yes to a lot of that, but there's a lot of opportunity in this company as well, or just this industry, I should say. So I think yes. However, you know, if you're, like these guys said, if you're willing to move, you know, there's more of that. All of us have, you know, moved and shifted jobs. If you're willing to travel, I mean, that's one of the things I love a ton here is that, kind of like Chance said, right? I do have a dog, but I'm not married, you know? And so I can find a place for the dog to go and jump on a plane and go wherever they need me. If they need some help at a different venue, or, you know, there's a venue opening or anything like that. So yes, but, you know, there's just opportunities. And if you're open to those, then you know, there's more opportunities for you.
Would anyone else like to chime in on that?
I think the only thing I would say is, and I'm sure both Kelli and Stacy will second me on this. As big as an industry as it is, it's very small. A lot of us all know each other, and whether it's a different company or whatever, everybody kind of interconnects, and they all, whether it's through touring or bands or just personnel moving from venue to venue, everybody kind of knows each other. So that's kind of a lot that goes into your trajectory, or how you manage yourself and manage the personal aspect of it, and how you can get a position. You know, whether it's, you know, I've been called both infamous and famous, depending on who you speak with, and it's all in regards to where you at or where you're going. So a lot of how you put yourself out and how your personal trajectory is in there does manage where you're kind of going to go. So don't forget who you're talking to, because tomorrow they could be, you know, anything. I mean, Stacy went from the GM of you know, Anaheim to the head of clubs, you know, so, you know, anything can happen.
That's awesome. One more question, and then I'll ask you guys for a little takeaway. Someone wants to know, it's anonymous, but how can a small venue stay relevant amongst like very big competitive venues?
I mean, are we talking like small, like physically small, or reputation small?
I think on both ends.
Well, I think, you know, there's this concept of not being a part of the trend, but starting the trend. And you want to be the trendsetter. It's like making sure that you don't get to the game too late. And I think for smaller venues, that's a big part of it, right? So, in like when I was at Viper Room, it's a tiny little club under 200 cap, but we had very diligent talent buyers who were out there scoping out the talent. We had Foster the People play to like 70 people at the Viper Room, and then next thing you know, they're playing arenas. So, it's making sure that you're relevant, but again, staying ahead, being the trendsetter, I think is really important for smaller venues, and for, smaller in reputation venues, keeping some sort of just individual kind of reputation, and making sure that you stand out. You're not cookie cutter. You're not the room with the stage and a bar and people that show up and turn the lights on, and you have some sort of personality. I think is huge, and that's how you make a small venue huge.
I want to chime in because everybody has talked about House of Blues here, and for folks to know, right? 21 Pilots, House of Blues, Dallas. It's, sorry, I just saw Leslie's comment here. House of Blues has a brand, and we talk about, just riffing off of what Stacy was saying, right? This idea that there's value and brand and connection with your community, that has imprinted, I believe, on Chance, Kelli, Stacy, and I on specifically on House of Blues. Wasn't just a music venue, and still isn't just a music venue. And I think that is to lean into some of those the smaller venues, to have, as Stacy said, the individuality and your brand really clear. I think it's an excellent point, Stacy.
Perfect. Last question. Do you have a favorite moment or memory while working at a venue?
So I can go, I'm all over the place, but I always like the things that make me laugh, like I'm doing right now, just thinking about it, are, and this is like so cheesy, but there's two, but the one that makes me always laugh are like the celebrity memories, because that's kind of like one of the funny things of like us getting into this business, right? And I'm sure Stacy and Chance can like pull out some really good like stories that we can never share with anyone of what we heard or saw from celebrities. So that one always kind of makes me laugh, because people think like that's what we do, right? Is we're hanging with rock stars and we run these like big parties every night and everything. And so I do always laugh when I actually have those moments and those memories, because it kind of plays into that. And then I get to have it because I'm like, oh, that's true. That did happen. Or I saw that, or something like that. So I always like that. But my big things always come back to, like I said at the beginning, like that fan experience, right? That making that memory for somebody coming back to a show 5 years later when the band comes through that tour again, and they say, oh my gosh, you were that girl that, I had twisted my ankle and you let me take the elevator up, and I was on the elevator and, somebody else got on that I knew and I hadn't seen from high school or something like that. And like, there's little things like that where I'm like, oh, that's so awesome. That's like my favorite stuff. So my favorite fun things involve the celebrities that we're not supposed to see and things like that. But my proper answer is being a part of those memories for people.
How about you, Chance?
It's one of those situations where you think back and like, yeah, I mean, my memoirs are going to be great. It's just like, I'll probably get sued by everybody though. So, I mean, there's just so many things you really shouldn't be talking about, because so many situations have been either, okay, that didn't really need to get out there, or, there's a lot of information where you find funny, and it is a lot of celebrity interaction sometimes, like Kelli said, where you're like, wow, did that really happen? But I can't think of anything. A lot of it has been probably, weird things like haven't seen certain performers on small stages that you don't normally see, or something to that effect. I mean, I can count myself lucky. Prince is one of my favorite performers, and I've probably seen him live probably 7 times, and like 4 of those times were in a Live Nation venue. So and to have that interaction and remembering the conversations with the tour, like, and all the jokes you hear about it in advance, you're like, don't look at him and all this other stuff. And you're like, okay. And then, you've got, 12 grown people with their eyes down, with their heads down when the guy walks in, because, it's Prince. And you're like, and he's all like, why is everybody looking to the ground? And you're like, wait a minute. They just, he's like, I said, oh, so my tour manager told that joke again for everybody not to look at me. And you're all like, oh, great. So it's stuff like that. But I mean, there are moments where times like that are great. But it is about the fan experience, where you've had an interaction with a fan or a crew member sometimes that, I've got to see this show. Can I work inside? Such and such. It's stuff like that you do remember. And that's kind of clicks a lot for me, especially after doing it this long. I can't tell you. I told Stacy on the phone a couple weeks ago after the first show. It wasn't the greatest first show we had when we reopened, but the fact that there were people in the room after 19 months, I mean, everybody was smiling. That was working. You just yeah, you're like, okay, this music is horrible, but this is awesome that everybody's in here and we're back to working and we're open again. So it's moments like that sometimes.
Perfect. Stacy, would you like to close this out?
I mean, I think that I will definitely echo, Chance and Kelli when we say, just creating that fan experience. I mean, there's nothing like being in a room with a sold out crowd and all of a sudden everyone just loses their minds at the same time and their faces are melting off. And, and you kind of get the chills because it's just, everyone's going through this crazy adrenaline rush together and they're having this experience together. I mean, that's kind of why we do what we do, but I think the second for me is when my teams accomplish a goal, and we make it to the finish line together because, we're putting in the hard work. I had an experience at the House of Anaheim with a show that seemed like the most impossible show for us to commit to and to get up and running. And it was just hurdle after hurdle after hurdle. And it was down to the 11th hour and we pulled it off. And at the end of the night, it was just like this huge letdown, but we all came together and it's like, we did it. And all 2,000 people in the room, again, lost their minds and left with giant smiles on their faces. And they're going to be talking about X, Y, and Z, for years to come. But we did it and we accomplished this impossible goal together. So that teamwork and camaraderie too is another reason why I like doing what I do.
Yeah, I think we all joke, but I mean, we really are it's a family when you start in this industry. We all go through in the trenches together for sure. We come out with these memories, everything we just said together. You work with people you're friends with for literally your life. So that's another awesome part of it.
And that's why you guys are such great leaders too. Seriously, amazing that it is not about the experience that you are having. You guys all answered the question about the experience that your teams and and the audience is having, and that's what makes you amazing. So thank you.
Yes, thank you guys so much for joining us today. Let's give a virtual round of applause for our panelists today.
I'm alone, so gone. You're under my skin. I'm losing it. No, I'm through.